Where do we find wisdom? That's the question for today, and welcome to my channel. And I'm Thomas. I do mostly educational videos on a lot of off the beaten path subjects that I think need to have some light shown upon them so that we can improve our lives in various ways. The system doesn't always tell us a lot of the things that we need to know, or that would really help us if we did know them. And I've spent a lot of time in my life trying to uncover those things, and I'm bringing at least some of them to you in these videos. For the last couple months, we've been focusing on the Tree of Life. That you may recognize here. This goes back to at least ancient Egypt, but probably before that. And the ancient Hebrews used it, called it Kabbalah, and it moved into Middle Ages, late Middle Ages in Europe. The Jews used it there. My version is kind of like an ancient Egyptian version by way of the West Indies. A lot of the books called Medunater that were written by Ra Aneferamen, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And great books, but I'm just putting a slightly different spin on it and putting some of my own experiences and some of my own findings into my own correlations into the Tree of Life. But basically what we have here is we have 10 different spheres. They look like circles. They're called spheres or sephira, sephiro. They're numbered 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then there is a thing here called the abyss, and then there is a 0 above the tree. Now, incidentally, I recognize that when this goes into the camera, the left becomes the right and the right becomes the left. But that doesn't affect the tree, as far as I can tell. This side of the tree generally refers to the left brain, and this side generally refers to the right brain. If it's reversed, then you can say, this side of the tree generally refers to the left hand, and this side generally refers to the right hand. So you can just either, if it's switched around, you can just flip your correlations from handedness to brain side of the brain. So anyway, keeping going, we have these different spheres along with this abyss and the 0 making up 12 different categories. And those 12 different categories are traditionally thought of as like our 12 faculties of consciousness, or our abilities of consciousness, capabilities of consciousness. And they go like this, where the 10th sphere is corresponding to our animal consciousness, or our survival instincts. The 9th sphere is about our domestic consciousness, what we're getting growing up in the home, where we're highly receptive, we're soaking everything up like a sponge, and we watch and eventually memorize and copy the behavior patterns and the methods of doing things from our caregivers and other influences we see in the home. The 8th sphere is somewhat similar, but it's out in the public sphere instead of the domestic sphere. We're going out in public, and they're giving us our belief systems and our, how to think about things. And to the extent that we believe what they tell us, our life becomes a lot easier. But what they tell us, because the 8th sphere also represents the trickster, and the deception. So what they tell us isn't always what is really true. So, but here at the A-sphere, we pretty much just accept it, and we find ourselves succeeding in life to the extent that we do accept it, because the A-sphere is where all the resources are, all the riches are, all the power and money is. So by kind of appeasing them, by believing what they say, they throw you a few bones and they make you a junior member of their little club. And so you end up using rationalizations to justify your beliefs. You rationalize them to yourself, like, oh, well, I don't know. I'm not smart enough to figure this out for myself. It might sound kind of fishy. Maybe I smell a rat, but uh, I could be wrong. What do I know? And so you kind of end up justifying um, the positions that are taken here by the expert opinion, by the consensus worldview, by the teachers and the preachers and the media that are all telling you what you're supposed to believe, the talking points. Then the seventh sphere is for people who kind of do recognize that there's something wrong and eventually get to the point where they're like, you know what, I can't buy this anymore. I imagine something else. So where the A sphere is about the real world, so-called, the seventh sphere is about the imaginary world. So you imagine something different and you use the faculties of the seventh sphere to develop that. The imagination, but also the inspiration and the intuition and our creative spark, our creative abilities to take disparate things and put them together into harmonious wholes that shed light on things and that please us. So also our pleasure principle. So we use these things to come up with, artifacts, um, whether they're pieces of art or inventions that try to improve upon what's at the A sphere. So we use the seventh sphere as really the alternative to the A sphere. Now, what ends up happening here is you come up with a new song that kind of tries to shed light on some of the falsities here at the A sphere. And then eventually the A sphere kind of comes over here and tries to co-opt the song and says, hey, we'll pay you $1 million for the rights to your song. And then they turn around and they turn it into a jingle for some kind of commercial or something like that. So the seventh sphere also needs to be able to kind of take the crossroads, and the crossroads points upward instead of directly back level, where instead of just selling the rights to your song so that it can go kind of be used against its very purposes, that you develop your song in an uphill matter by yourself, or without this influence of all the resources. And so this is kind of like taking the crossroads. This is an uphill fight to go towards 6, because this here is a pyramid. So you see that these are the base of the pyramid. This is the apex of the pyramid. So you got to climb. And so what happens is that you may see people who operate up here. They inspire you. This is your inspiration. Your inspiration gives you the 1% of the impetus you need to climb, to make this climb. But the 99% is perspiration. And a lot of it is hard work. Whereas if you just gave it back to the A sphere, it would be very easy. So that's why the A sphere has so much influence, is because that's where all the resources and power are. And so they kind of grease the skids for you. Anytime that you comply with what they say, they make life easy for you. They cut away all of the difficulties because it's already set up here. So, but otherwise you kind of have to make it on your own. But eventually we get to a certain point of desperation where we recognize that, I can't live a lie, and I need to do this on my own, even if nobody's helping me. um, Even if it's much more difficult. Okay, then when we get to the sixth sphere, we recognize we're already at the sixth sphere. This is where we're located centrally, and you can see that the sixth sphere is connected with everything else. But the sixth sphere is our free will faculty, and this boils down to our ability to pay attention and to make decisions. The first of which will be our decision to change our attention, because we find that our attention is generally focused down the tree. So even though we are here at 6, we keep our focus down at the bottom of the tree, 8, 9, and 10 in particular. And, because it's much more comfortable. We grew up this way. This is how we grew up. And so when we pay our attention down here, it's very easy. It's our comfort zone. But when we make the decision, the other half of the sixth sphere, to turn our attention around to face the higher aspects, our spiritual aspects, then it becomes quite uncomfortable, because we're kind of staring into the unknown. Because these aspects, even though they're more powerful in our lives, they're not yet, because they're not well developed. We haven't really fleshed these things out the same way that we flesh this stuff out here. And so we're kind of staring into nothingness when we turn our attention around, and it requires great courage. But, the courage is usually born out of desperation, and we eventually take it when we, can't see any other way out. Okay, so the fifth and the fourth sphere are the first aspects that we're kind of looking at when we focus our attention up the tree. And the fifth sphere is our sense of justice, and the fourth sphere, to a great extent, is our sense of law and order. The law and order comes from our cosmologies, our holy books, our theories of everything, grand unified theories that attempt to explain how the universe is, how it works, where it came from, what its purpose is, where it's going, our place in it, and all those things. And it comes from long periods, not even just one person, but whole civilizations of people making observations and investigations and measurements and experiments about how things actually work. So this is really like an observation about how things work, and it's an explanation in a media like a book or something like that, that attempts to explain how everything works. And then this law, the universal law or natural law, is enforced here at the fifth sphere. So this is really like the law of karma. As you sow, so shall you reap. What comes around goes around, and the boomerang effect. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. You can think of this as a mirror right here at the fifth sphere, where you act and you get immediate feedback on your act. So the feedback, tells you the weaknesses of your act, because karma is really measured by our violence and waste and violation. And so if our actions are wasteful, then waste will come returning to us. If our actions are violent, violence will come back to us. And so we can gradually learn from our karma and fine-tune our actions in order to eliminate, or at least minimize, the violence and waste involved. So the fifth sphere can become a teacher to us, and so can the fourth sphere, as we learn to, maybe look at some of these different cosmologies or holy books. And again, it's recommended that you can't really get too much mileage from just looking at one. There are many different kinds of cosmologies and holy books and theories of everything out there, and a comparative look at them will give you much more of a perspective on how what resonates with you and what resonates with your own experiences and your own experiments. Okay, now when we get to the abyss, we're talking about our psychic powers, particularly our ability to tune into and recognize omens, and then our ability to act upon those omens. Those are really magnetic effects. Okay, and the omen is really like an external magnetic charge, and so the omen is a coincidence or a synchronicity that happens in our life that is kind of a pointer, that it's like, oh wow, it's a charged object where it's like this is something that kind of like it sticks in your mind, like, wow, that's a weird thing, and it presents you with a course of action that you uh, you need to follow in order to, as an answer to the original omen. So the first thing is to be able to recognize the omen, and then the second thing is to have the courage to act upon it, because the behavior that is usually presented to you in a conjunction with the omen causes you to kind of put yourself out there and expose yourself by acting upon the omen. Then we have 3, 2, and 1, which are our divine faculties within. And this here is omnipotence, all powerful, omniscience, all knowing, and then omnipresence, all present, all at once, eternally, all everything, the all. And the omnipotence we tap into through our sound synchronization, including mantra, but also sacred music, and then and really focusing on the music. And then the second sphere, omniscience, all-knowing, or wisdom, is really our ability to solve problems, to be able to tune in to our problems and come up with solutions to them. And this has an anticipatory character, meaning that it's looking into the future. And then and this is approached through sight, through our vision, as opposed to our sound. Okay, and then the first sphere is our deep approach by approaching our deepest center, going all the way to our core. And then we realize that what's inside of us, what's deepest inside of us, is the exact same thing as what's deepest inside of everybody else and every other thing in the universe. And so that unites everything. We realize that we're all part of the same thing. And so it's a unifying factor. And then the zero sphere above the tree is kind of like it's part of the creator, but it is not part of the universe. So it's the part of the creator that the creator reserves for itself. So we don't have direct access to this, only indirect access to this through the creator. So that is the zero sphere, a mystery and a nothingness. Okay, so that is the kind of short version on the 12 different faculties of consciousness. And that's kind of like the beginner's spiel. Now, if we want to move toward a more advanced level, once we understand it a little better, and we dabble in the advanced, just to perk up our interest, pique our interest, and to be able to, kind of integrate these things slowly but surely. What I've done is I've taken the whole tree, because people say, you can apply the tree of life to anything. and it will break everything down into its 12 different faculties. So that's what I did. Is I put the tree and boiled it down into miniature, and then I applied it to each one of the spheres. So I broke down the 10th sphere into its own 12 mini abilities or faculties. And then I broke down the 9th sphere into its 12, and so on. So I end up with a total of 144 different mini faculties or mini abilities, or what I call stages in life. So those stages are not chronological stages, but they are dramatic stages. So 144 different dramas that we go through on our path through life, and with a suggestion about how to negotiate them. And if you'd like to get a free copy of that list, at least an annotated copy of that list, just click the link below in the description, and I'll send you out a free copy. Meanwhile, we go through, in the end of these videos that I've been doing every day, we go through one of the 144 different stages, kind of at random. Today, we're looking at number 119. Where do we find wisdom? And number 119 corresponds to the 2nd sphere, and it corresponds to the first fractal of the 2nd sphere. Okay, so it's a combination of the anticipatory character of wisdom, being able to solve all our problems, and then the first sphere within there, which is the ether, which is the thing that underlies all of us and that unifies all of us. So it's kind of the unifying aspect within the wisdom or omniscience aspect. So that's kind of what we're talking about today, and that number 119, and that's called out of nowhere. Stage number 119 is about objects suddenly moving into our frequency range to be perceived. Or were they there all along and we just tuned them in? Out of nowhere. The highest meaning of the 2nd sphere is that the more we see that fundamental concepts only exist because of the inability to find the point through which they are found to be halves of a unit, or complementary reciprocals. The movement of halves takes place in time and space, the weighing of words. Once we stay out of the content of our thoughts for long enough, we reach a balanced, equilibrating point, an equanimity, a homeostasis, a resonance. We see the universe of motion. We live in a universe of motion that sweeps the rug out from under the conventional reference system, out of nowhere. Unit motion is the boundary between the two halves, the balanced, equilibrating point. Time-changing space and space-changing time in perfect balance. Done right, it creates a bridge between the realms. The universe of motion, the boundary, the bridge, which is the access key to the Philosopher's Stone. Things appear out of nowhere. They suddenly appear in the reference system, thrown into consciousness, when they reach the time-space boundary. Feeling like field of the subconscious, of the spirit bodies. Our self, as the indwelling intelligence, depends on the full awakening of ourselves, Awaken to the underlying motion, the universe of motion, the motion called ether, that when considered in all sciences and religions and philosophies will furnish solutions. Omniscience, know not all there is to know, but all that is needed to avoid or to solve problems. Not all there is, not all at once. Wisdom is not knowing everything, but to know how to solve our problems. We know what we need to know when we need to know it. And this knowing comes out of nowhere, like intuition, learning to apply the universe of motion to problems. To know reality, thinking must be stilled. When we still our thinking, then we can notice the universe of motion. We must stay out of elaborating our thoughts and sensations with content. No building of stories. Stay on the sensate level and thereby penetrate reality. Be a disinterested spectator to the parade of thoughts. Not so foolish as to go chasing our thoughts with our attention, turning them into stories, judgments, opinions, preferences, attraction and aversion, or fairness debates. Wisdom is outside of the box. Solutions are outside of the box. Our thinking is always inside of the box. So it must be ignored to get to wisdom. The universe of motion is the box. From within, non-local, learning from within, intuition, complex revelation, comes from a location in time. But time has no location in space. No location out of nowhere, from all directions, or none. Scalar, non-local. So it looks like it's coming out of nowhere. It is coming across the border, the unit speed of the universe of motion. All oracles, all divination is based on this equation. And so the sage or wizard can bring one into the world out of nowhere. Okay, that is number 119, which is called Out of Nowhere. And it is the first fractal of the second sphere. Thanks for sticking around to the end. And if you like the video, you can click the like button, you can share the video with others, and you can subscribe to the channel. As well, you can see that my Cash App and Venmo addresses are in there if you'd like to make a donation to further research. And you can also click the link in the description to get your free copy of the 144 fractal faculties that we're covering each day on here, one day at a time. But if you get the whole list, you can kind of get an overview and you really see the whole. And so you can kind of play along at home a little bit more easily than if you're just watching the videos. There was something else I was going to say, but I can't remember. But I bet you by next video I'll remember. So that gives you a really good reason to tune in tomorrow to figure out what I was going to say here at the end that I forgot. So tune in tomorrow, and we'll be going through another one of the 144 fractal faculties. And in the meanwhile, have a beautiful Mother's Day, and enjoy.